The ears I always kind of clean up by hand too. I was always told that it's kind of good, especially if you do Bondo, to kind of leave that kind of stuff on there, because once you dry it and get ready to apply your Bondo, it kind of, you'll kind of rough all that up and it'll give the Bondo something to adhere to. But then again, we'll get back to that. So it's okay if your ears are still a little messy looking. We'll get to that when we get back to the ears, when we go to Bondo our ears. But it's okay if you turn them out and they're still a little rough looking, because that kind of actually helps us give the Bondo something to adhere to. Okay, so what I'm doing right now, before I start Bondoing the ears, I'm going to make sure, as you can see, these exotic animals, when they come to me, they usually have a lot of ear tags and stuff like that from the farms and the lodges that they were raised on here in the States, because for legal reasons, they're exotic animals being raised in captivity for hunting purposes here. So they are tagged and everything. As you can see, I've got a big ear. In fact, I have 2 ear tags in this animal. So, and usually your male animals that have horns and antlers and whatnot, they do a lot of fighting. So you're going to have a lot of scar tissue and usually a lot of pop holes, sometimes in the forehead, around the eyes, and in the ears. So that's something you're going to have to learn to work around. And even when it's as extreme as this one, you're going to have to repair. So that's something we're going to, and that's something we're going to have to go over too. And I use some of my fleshing skin. I'll use as patches. And then I also use my invisible thread to sew as well. So we will get back into that in just a minute after I finish working on this a little bit more. I am actually, number one, breaking up scar tissue, pieces of scar tissue, and any cartilage or seams along the edge of the ear that maybe didn't open up quite when I was turning out the ears in the initial skinning process. If I feel like it wasn't opened up all the way, or if I'm just, a scar needs to be opened up a little bit more before I Bondo it, because I want to make sure that that Bondo penetrates and gets into all the way up to where the ear seams are. You want to make sure that Bondo, or else you'll have ear parts that will dry and warp or bend over, and I mean, which you can use pieces of plastic to pin them to make sure they dry straight, but still they can just be bent or give it a bent or warped or squiggly kind of look. So if you want straight ear edges, I always make sure I open them up. Of course, this one, as you can see, is split from tags and from fighting and scar tissue and stuff. I had to open it up, and I'm going to have to repair it. But he had a lot of scar tissue in his ears, not just from the tags, but probably from anywhere from fly bites to fights and all that kind of stuff. And you just have to open it up so that you can get all that Bondo in to have nice clean ear seams. So we have nice lines on our ears. Okay, and now since we're going to be doing fine detail work, if you haven't noticed, I've had to put my old lady glasses on, my readers on, because now we're going to be doing some sewing. And what I use is this upholstery thread and the L-shaped needle that I ordered from Mackenzie's. Now the thread I get at Walmart. And this ear only has the one tear on it, so we're going to go ahead and do this one first for our tutorial. But so I'm going to show you how I go ahead and sew that up. And usually if it sews pretty well, I don't worry about patching it, but we'll see how well it holds up in this cartilage. If it seems like it's holding fine, I won't worry about it. But if it seems like seems pretty fragile and the thread might feel like tearing out, or it might later on, then I will patch it up with I will glue this patch over it as well to protect those stitches and try to ensure them from breaking off or coming loose, the ear splitting later on as the mount dries. So I usually use my little handmade patches here from the trimmings from my flesher that I've dried out, made little pieces of leather patches. I'll use those as a patch over my sew job if needed. But so where I usually, like I said, would just do a basic baseball stitch, and we'll come in. I usually start on the flesh side, and I'll come in and pull it all the way through, and I've just threaded my needle basically, and just doing it single thread. I haven't tied my thread together, and I'm going to tie it down here on the base, and then I'm going to come back through on the other side and just start bringing those edges together. And I always use my needle and kind of try to keep my hair tucked down in there. Of course, you can use a wire or something, a wire brush or something, or your brush afterwards. Make sure you're getting enough grab so that it's just not tearing through. Okay, so once I've got my ear sewn up and closed up, like I said, just a single string baseball stitch. I just kind of do a simple baseball stitch, and I come to the end of my ear where I'm sewing. I just bring it back around, and I'm going to pull that excess string out of there, and then I'm just going to come back in a couple times is what I do, and just kind of knot it on itself and pull it tight, and then I will cut it off. And I always leave a little extra on both ends, because when I bondo it, that'll attach onto the bondo, and that gives me like an extra anchor in the bondo to make sure that thread doesn't come undone and feed back out. So I always leave an extra. I never cut it flush to my knot, because I want to make sure that bondo adheres some of that string to hold it there so it doesn't unravel. Hi, now these are pieces of flesh that I've scavenged out of my bucket from flushing, and these are what I will use to make patches out of, especially on thin spots or cartilage spots on the ears that's going to be difficult to sew, or parts that tear easily. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use the hair blow dryer, and I'm going to dry these thin pieces of skin out that came from flushing. And I actually will use these as patches on especially ears or nose areas or lip areas that are harder to sew, even though I use the invisible thread or whatnot. Sometimes if it has a lot of cartilage in that area or the skin is already really thin, your needle and thread will just keep tearing and tearing and tearing, and so it's better to just try to patch. And also I'll dry these out, and then they'll make like little pieces of leather because they are tanned as well. Like I said, they're from my scrap pile from my fleshing, and you want to make sure you get pieces that are skin. And if you pull on them, when you pull them out of your bucket, if they tear easily, then you know it's either fat or it's old muscle or meat. So you don't want to use those pieces. You want to make sure they're good and strong like that, so you know they're going to be leathery. They don't tear. So you know it's skin and not meat or fat. And I will use these with super glue and use them to patch. So as you can see, I've started repairing this other ear, and this one had all the ear tags in it. And I went ahead and left these metal ear tags in. Sometimes if they're the plastic ear tags, I'll go ahead and cut them off. But these I went ahead and left in because, I don't know, I kind of like to try to leave the animal as is as much as possible. And these are also, you know, identification for the animal. And sometimes, you know, for legal reasons, I just try to leave the identification numbers and stuff on the animal so they know it's a legal harvested animal. So I went ahead, this one was torn off to the side, so I went ahead and loosely sewed it together just to pull it together. But since I'm going to bondo these ears, I'm going to go ahead and put a patch over it, because I do not want my bondo to squeeze out, or I'm going to try to keep as much bondo as possible from squeezing out. You want to keep as much bondo possible in your ears. So, and that's the biggest reason for patching. And sometimes from turning your ears out, you'll like nick this little spot down here at the base of your ear, which is a common happening, but you can patch that as well, and I'll show you that. Now this ear tag, it's pulled a little, this part's more in the cartilage, so I'm not going to try to sew that without disfiguring the ear, so I'm just going to put a patch in that one. So I'm going to show you now how to do that. So what I'm going to do is, usually what I do is I match up the size. Let me cut these rough edges off, and I just kind of eyeball it and match up a good size of my little piece of patch that I made. And as you can see, that's going to fit pretty nicely, and I want to make sure that there's enough catch around the edge. You see how I made it a little bigger than the hole, because remember, I'm going to glue this down. So I want to make sure that I have enough of an area for the glue to adhere. Okay, so then what I do is I take my super glue and I just start putting it around the edges. I never put it too close to the inside edge where you see the hair, because I don't want it to get on that hair. I just want it to adhere to the flesh part. And I'm going to actually overlap that tag a little bit, and I'm going to use this to hold it in place until it dries, to make sure it makes good contact. And it's already drying because it's sticking to my glove. And then what I do is I always go back, and it might be excessive, but I always go back and kind of go over the edges of my patch, just to make sure that it doesn't, when I go to put the bondo in, it doesn't come up, and it kind of holds it better in place. And then I will take my hair blow dryer here and just kind of lightly make sure that sets. good for right now. Now what I'm trying to decide to do or not is just to go ahead and run a piece over this, which I probably do, is just go ahead and run a piece, make sure that tag is tucked on the inside of my ear, and go ahead and run a piece the whole over here that will overlap this patch, so that, like I said, so none of my Bondo, when I fill this ear with Bondo, when I flip it right side out, that it will not leak out, that my Bondo will stay in the ear and not come spilling out. So I'm going to make myself another patch. That looks about right. So like I said, just make sure, kind of eyeball it, and then I'm going to run my super glue along those outside edges. And then I'm going to press my patch down. It is sticking to my glove. There we go. Without tearing it apart. And I still want to make sure that I stay, like I stay within my creases of my ears. And sometimes I'll kind of make sure I can still fold the ear. You don't want to do it too tight, because remember, you want that to be flexible and move with the ear when you go to Bondo it and shape it later. And I'm going to go around that outside edge because it still looks loose here to me. And make sure that is down good and secure. Okay, and again, I'm going to take my little handy dandy blow dryer. And that is good and dry, that patch there. And see, my ear can still bend at the crease, so it's still flexible when I go to form it with the Bondo. Okay, now I'm now going to go back to this other side here. And I'm not going to worry so much about this little hole here. If a little Bondo comes out, it's okay. I'll take my paint thinner and a wire brush, and I can clean that Bondo off, and the Bondo will seal that. It's not a large gaping hole, so my Bondo isn't just going to dump out and leave the ear. So, but if a little bit pops through, it's okay. I'll show you how to clean that up once we start doing the Bondo. But now I'm going to go ahead and make a quick patch for this ear, and then we'll dry this ear up and we'll be ready to start with the Bondo process. Thank you for watching us here at K&C Taxidermy. Remember to like and subscribe us here on YouTube, and join us next time for our latest creation, and we'll see you then.